How's it going, everybody? It's Young here, and welcome to my analysis of the Kojima Productions logo movie. For those who missed it, during his San Diego Comic-Con 2016 panel, Kojima showed off a short but sweet clip featuring Luden, the Kojima Productions mascot. It's only like 30 seconds long, and I doubt it tells us too much about Death Stranding, but I figured I would still take some time to analyze the footage, as you never know what secrets lurk in anything that Kojima makes. The footage begins with Luden taking a step on the sand here, leaving a footprint. Interesting to note about the way the movie begins is that it's very similar to Death Stranding's trailer, except we see handprints in the latter instead of a footprint. Hard to say for sure if the similar way each footage begins was a deliberate decision by Kojima, but let's assume for a second that this was done on purpose. In that case, one theory that I have is that the handprints represent the early stages of man, while the footprints represent the later stages. In Death Stranding, we see handprints making their way to Norman Reedus' character, and it almost looks like an invisible being is crawling through the sand. This is very akin to a baby who crawls before they walk. In the logo movie, on the other hand, we see a footprint confidently placed on the sand of this foreign planet, possibly symbolizing the adult stages of man, who walk upright. I got this idea from a famous riddle from Greek mythology that you may know called the Riddle of the Sphinx that was offered to Oedipus, mythical king of Thebes. In that story, the riddle goes as follows: what is that which in the morning goeth upon 4 feet, upon 2 feet in the afternoon, and in the evening upon 3? The answer is, of course, man. Throughout man's life, in the morning, or as a baby, we crawl on all 4s. In the afternoon, as an adult, we walk upright on 2 feet. And in the evening, or as elders, we may use a cane to help us support our aging bodies. So what if Death Stranding and its handprints represent the morning or childhood? You know, the fact that babies crawl. And the Luden's logo movie and its footprints represent the afternoon or adulthood. What if there's some kind of connection between the two footage there? And hell, at the end of the trailer, we even see Luden's laying down his flag, and this could very much symbolize the cane in the Sphinx's riddle. And what if this is not only symbolism for stages of a man's life, but also stages of human evolution? After all, in the early stages, man used to walk using both their feet and hands, and then we evolved to walk upright. I know I might be reaching here, it's just I find it peculiar that the two footage begin so similarly, and Kojima seldom does anything just because. There is usually a deliberate decision behind really specific things. And this idea of evolution is further represented within the content of each respective footage. In Death Stranding, we see Norman Reedus' character fully naked with his baby, showcasing an imagery that has a very primitive quality, almost caveman-like, as if we are glimpsing mankind's early stages in history. Not to mention that we see Norman Reedus in a fetal position initially along with a baby, which perhaps further highlights the symbolism of the early stage of a man's life. In the logo movie, on the other hand, we see Luden confidently walking upright from the get-go, fully equipped with a technologically advanced spacesuit, as if we're glimpsing an advanced stage of mankind's history. What we see in the logo movie feels a stage or two more advanced than the more primitive elements found in Death Stranding. So, bottom line, I noticed that the logo movie begins in a very similar manner as Death Stranding, except we see a footprint instead of handprints, which perhaps serve as symbolisms that have implications regarding the various stages of human's life, as well as stages of human evolution. This is speculation, of course, and a really wild shot in the dark, I will admit, but I still think this similarity is something worth contemplating. Now, this could be just me, but another similarity to Death Stranding that I found is the graphics in this footage. I think we might be looking at the same engine that was used to create Death Stranding's trailer. The way the sand reacts to Luden's step and the way the debris in the environment looks just seems very reminiscent of Death Stranding. Remember when Kojima announced Phantom Pain back in VGA 2012, and one of the ways people knew that it was Metal Gear Solid 5 is that it looked like the Fox engine? That's the feeling that I get with this logo movie, except this time we don't know the name of the engine Kojima used to create the Death Stranding trailer, but those two footage have this very similar visual signature. Assuming this is true, this logo movie might also serve as a glimpse at the kinds of visual effects that this mysterious engine can achieve. Right here, we can see some really great lighting effects that react very realistically to the sand. We can see individual grains of sand shifting and spreading as Luden takes a step. we can see some intricate details on Luden's boot. Then, if we look close enough, we can see some pretty subtle yet impressive looking particle effects, and as the camera pans, we are shown what the base of Luden's spear looks like. Interesting to notice this glowing blue ring, which has an effect that somewhat reminds me of the handcuffs in Death Stranding's trailer. Whether we're looking at the same technology or whether this implies some kind of connection between Luden's and Death Stranding, that's hard to say for sure. As the camera pans up, if we slow down the footage, we can see this very detailed and badass model of Luden's. Honestly, this character design is so cool that it would be a damn shame if he didn't make an appearance in Death Stranding like Kojima claims. Moving along, after the camera pans up, a creature zooms past Luden's, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out that the creature is a whale, or more specifically, a sperm whale, which happens to be the same type of whale that Moby Dick was. Kojima sure loves his whales and Moby Dick references. You can even see its eye if you freeze at the right time. Pretty terrifying, and as it further zooms past, you can eventually get a glimpse of its tail fin, which further confirms the nature of this creature. Now, what's interesting about this particular segment is that it's shot so that it looks like Luden's is underwater, especially with the dark environment, the way everything seems kind of floaty, the way these particles behave, and of course, the giant fucking whale lurking about. I think Kojima might be trying to tell us something through this underwater motif, but I'll come back to this later. There's other stuff I need to discuss first. Speaking of the particles, they look pretty impressive, and again, we might be getting a glimpse at some of the graphical capabilities of Death Stranding's game engine. We can also see some particles emanating from Luden's flagpole, but these have a more glittery, glowing effect. It looks to be some kind of advanced holographic technology. Then, as Luden's turns around, we are shown a close-up of his front, where we see the terrifying yet badass-looking skull mask dimly lighted by the suit. And as the sun rises from the planet in the background, we are shown that there is indeed a man behind the mask. Unfortunately, this footage doesn't bring us any closer to solving the identity of the man behind the mask. The most common assumption is, of course, that it's none other than Norman Reedus' character, but during his San Diego Comic-Con 2016 panel, Kojima reiterated time and again that Luden's was nothing more than a mascot for Kojima Productions, that he wasn't Norman Reedus' character, and that he won't make an appearance in Death Stranding. He further elaborated by claiming that the face inside the mask was modeled after his own facial scan data taken from Sony's Performance Capture Studio during his worldwide technology tour a few months back. Apparently, this facial scan data was then modified and molded into the face that we see in the trailer and in the promotional poster. But I'll believe those claims when Kojima decides to take the mask off of Luden's and show us. If he truly had nothing to hide, and if the man behind the mask were that simple, just some kind of modified version of Kojima's face, why the cloak and dagger? Why hide his face at all? Why not just show us what's underneath the mask? Until then, I think Luden's could be anyone, including Norman Reedus' character. Anyway, moving on, we are shown a rather interesting new feature of Luden's space helmet. You can see here that he presses some kind of button towards the right side of his head, and based on what I'm seeing in this prototype action figure, it looks like the button resides on the top of his flashlight-like device attached to the helmet. When pressed, some red lights inside the helmet start blinking, and the light actually reveals that there's some kind of pattern engraved on the helmet's transparent surface. It looks like a bunch of vertical lines and dots evenly spread out. Hard to say what purpose this pattern serves, but perhaps it has something to do with what happens next, which is that the transparent surface of the helmet becomes covered up by some kind of silver-colored coating that probably serves to filter out harmful rays from the sun and whatnot, like sunglasses, except on a larger scale. Real-life astronaut suits also do this by placing some kind of gold coating on the visors. But anyway, notice how the helmet gets covered up in square-shaped splotches. It almost looks like really big pixels being colored in, with the circles possibly marking the center of each quote-unquote pixel. So this pattern on the helmet may be a guideline of sorts for this visor coating technology. Another interesting aspect of Luden's suit that I would like to point out before moving on are these circular discs protruding from his suit. Kojima confirmed previously that these were inspired by the Alan Turing computer, or the Alan Turing machine. More specifically, Alan Turing invented a machine called the bomb, which used rotating disks to decipher German codes and ciphers during World War II. What's really cool about Luden's design is that if you look closely, you can actually see the disks scattered throughout his body rotating in a similar fashion to the disks in Turing's machine. There's a small part of each disc that lights up, acting as dials of some kind, and as the camera pans up on Luden's, if you keep an eye on the dials, you can see the discs rotating. It's pretty cool. Hard to say what purpose they serve though, but something that I noticed is that when Luden's activates the visor coating, the discs start spinning like crazy, so I'm thinking that maybe these discs somehow regulate certain functions of the suit, perhaps acting like gears of a machine or something. Moving along, the camera pans back as Luden's lays down his flag, which is also revealed to double as a spear, and from the holographic particles emanates the Kojima Productions flag, which has this holographic aesthetic to it. By now, it becomes clear that we were actually in space the whole time, not underwater. Now let me talk about that for a second. I previously talked about how the handprint in Death Stranding versus the footprint in this footage could represent different stages of a man's life or different stages of mankind's evolution. And I think the idea of evolution is further represented through this motif of going from a seemingly underwater environment to what is finally revealed to be space or another planet. It is a well-known fact that all organisms on Earth evolved from these underwater microorganisms known as archaea, and after billions of years they finally evolved to be able to walk on land to become all manners of species, among them being us humans. And now, with knowledge and technology having come as far as they have, many would say that our final step in evolution, the final frontier, is space, which is where we see Luden's at the end of the Logo movie. So basically, the footage seemingly starts out where all organisms began, underwater, and ends in mankind's final frontier, space. If you ask me, one could argue that the Logo movie might be showing us a very abridged version of Earth's evolutionary history, or at the very least, its starting point and finish line. Food for thought. The trailer finally ends with a sperm whale we saw before defying the laws of nature and leaping from the ground, with water rising and splashing with it, until it transforms into a holographic effect that is similar to the Luden's flag. The whale's got this very augmented reality feeling about it, which is interesting. According to Kojima, making people question whether this whale was real or not was intentional. Kojima also said that the idea behind the whale leaping out was that it's meant to show that the whale wants to play, with play being a big theme of Kojima Productions' philosophy and all, hence why the mascot was named after the Latin word for playing, Ludens. As the whale lands, we see this digital-looking wave pulsing through the land, leaving grid marks all around, almost as if further indicating that we might be looking at augmented reality or some kind of virtual space. I'm sure that in part this was meant to highlight the idea that Kojima Productions is primarily about making games and these virtual worlds that you can get lost in, but whether this has any implications on Death Stranding, well, I honestly can't say, but everything here does look very high-tech and advanced, and we did see glimpses of advanced technology in Death Stranding's trailer, so maybe there is some connection. I also want to add that the water effects from when the whale leaps looks really great. I mean, a lot of game developers often struggle with making water look real, especially when the water splashes up in the air like that, but this looks pretty damn good. And overall, the graphics in this footage look amazing, and I'm honestly fairly confident that we're looking at the same engine that was used for Death Stranding's teaser trailer. As I said before, every game engine emanates this unique visual signature, like the Fox engine, and from what I'm seeing here, the Logo movie has the same visual signature as Death Stranding. This could just be me, but that's just what I'm seeing. And if this is indeed the case, and if the Logo movie is also running in real time like the Death Stranding trailer was, we might be in for a treat as far as graphics go. Kojima's never been one to be afraid of pushing the boundaries of in-game graphics in every generation of consoles, so I'm excited to see how good his latest game will look, especially now that he has some incredible technology from Sony at his disposal. Now, I previously talked about how the Logo movie begins similarly to Death Stranding's teaser trailer, but you may also notice that it ends similarly as well. Both footage end with the camera panned back away from the main subject to reveal a vast vista, and both even feature some of the same things in the background, like whales and seawater. The fact that both trailers feature whales is especially interesting to me, particularly the fact that in Death Stranding's trailer, the whales are all dead, while the one featured in the logo movie seems alive and well. This sort of goes back to what Kojima shared about the natural phenomenon called mass stranding, which is when a bunch of sea animals get stranded on the beach. When the animals are alive, it's called live stranding, but when they're dead, it's called death stranding. And what's interesting is that Death Stranding's trailer seems to be showing us the Death Stranding version of mass strandings, while this logo movie is showing us something akin to live stranding, with a whale seemingly stranded on this foreign planet and stranded on land, but is somehow alive and well and hopping around happily. So once again, like with the handprint versus the footprint, the naked primitive Norman Reedus versus the fully equipped and high-tech Ludens, and the lonely setting that looks like the shore of some kind of beach versus the lonely setting that is outer space, we are once again shown similar motifs that take completely different directions, this time with dead whales versus live whales, or Death Stranding versus Life Stranding. I feel like all of these parallel yet opposing motifs may serve to further highlight that there might be some kind of connection between Death Stranding and this logo movie footage, or at least between Norman Reedus' character and Luden's. Again, it's all speculation and I could be looking too much into things, but it just seems like too much of a coincidence that there's just so much parallel between the two footage. Anyway, it's food for thought. It's hard to say what the implications are with so little information, but it's something I think worth thinking about. The last thing we are shown in this footage is the Kojima Productions logo, which most of you should be familiar with by now. And like with Luden's 3D model, you can see some moving pieces like the rotating discs and whatnot. Looks very cool indeed, but not much to analyze here. Thus concludes the Kojima Productions logo movie, and with that, I would like to end this analysis. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts and theories about the footage. Let me know if you noticed anything that I didn't, and to be further updated on Death Stranding news, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.